I'm happiest in the saddle.
A fellow sportsman.
I am an FBI agent!
Great Scott!
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole!
Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
Come with me if you want to live.
Hello, and welcome to Retro Ramble. I'm Charlie McGee.
I'm George McGee.
And this time, yes, ladies and gentlemen, 1985, Commando.
Dun, dun, dun.
Release the beeping clock. Release the, is it the panpipes? The
steel drums. Steel drums. Those very well-fitting Jamaican steel drums.
Yeah, so we have been, obviously, George and I were hoping to do this in person together, which is why it's not been done for so long. I think we wanted to tee this up with...
A lot of people, it has been a very popular request of like, hey guys, come on, when are you going to do Commando?
Yeah, and we'll talk about in the episode. It was up in the beginning, way back when we first started. We decided to do Predator as one of our first episodes. Commando was considered. And in this episode, we will touch on the crossovers that have popped up in Die Hard and the sequel that never was of Commando and all the other links. But what can people expect? Maybe one or two impressions of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Maybe
some comments on wardrobe for villains, perhaps.
Just perchance. But no, this film is kind of one of the reasons we're doing this podcast. So if you like our podcast, if you like the episodes we've done before, you are not going to be disappointed. Just be aware that as well as taking the piss out of this film and having a lot of fun with it, we have an enormous amount of love for a film that maybe a few critics don't rate that highly, but who cares? So George, should we give the guys a bit of a disclaimer?
For the uninitiated, Retro Ramble, we are a film podcast. Charlie and I are brothers, and this podcast is all about us revisiting the films of our youth. Have they stood the test of time? What have they gone on to influence? Have they been remade? Have they been spun off into a series? And all that jazz. But yes, as Charlie was hinting, it's an affectionate look, but it's almost like reminiscing with an old friend. So yes, we go into these films in detail. There's spoilers from the off. Whilst it's not an in-depth critical appraisal, we sort of try and shed some light on the films in terms of trivia, but we also want to have a bit of fun with it as well.
It's about remembering the mindset we had when we watched these films. We were young kids. We watched these films. We found them hilarious. We thought the blood, the explosions were hilarious. And I think we tried to hold on to some of that mentality while still looking at it through the lens of 2021. And as came up on our last episode talking to Timon Singh, they are still making films like this if you look to Fast and Furious, and I'm sure some other links will come up, whether it be in our Coulda, woulda, shoulda, or some special features that we've got coming up later on. So this film was brought to us by who, George? It was 1985.
Well, it's a Joel Silver production. He's no stranger to Retro Ramble. I think it's the first time we've encountered director Mark L. Lester, I think is his name. So yes, we'll talk about him as well.
Right, I'm ready to hit the trailer. Are you ready to go? Are you ready? Have you flexed? This is a big one for us, bro.
I've packed all my bags, all my guns. I'm dangling with grenades. Go for it.
Okay, let's do this. Enjoy the show.
Enjoy.
Hunted him down.
Colonel, we went to a lot of trouble to find you.
They murdered his friends. And they took the only thing he would kill for.
If you want your kid back, then you gotta cooperate. Right?
Wrong.
Now, somewhere, somehow, someone's gonna pay.
Do you think that he is going to give us any problems?
He'll do exactly as he's told.
Hasta luego, fellas.
You're a funny guy, Sully. That's why I'm going to kill you last.
Are you gonna tell me what's going on or what?
No. Don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired. What are you doing?
Helping you get her back.
Remember, Sally, when I promised to kill you last?
That's what made you did.
I lied.
If it's a mission no man can survive, he's the man for the job. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Commando.
Let's party.
Dun, dun, dun. I don't think I've actually seen the trailer for Commando.
Oh, but you will, man. I'll send them to you when I'm, in prep for this. But there's a lot of him getting ready.
Yeah, I can imagine. They took his daughter. They took the wrong man's daughter.
There's lots of mummies being exploded. So, George, before I ask you the question I ask you on every single episode of how did we get this film, just to explain what a lot of our followers have been asking, why is it taking us so long? I mentioned this in the intro. We were going to cover this as one of our first films, were we not?
To be fair, we've been doing this podcast for a few years now, so I knew, obviously, Arnie.
It was going to come up.
It was. Arnie, as many of our regular listeners will know, he's a regular. I think we do at least one Arnie film a year.
A quarter.
Yeah, well, I say maybe it's usually like at least two a year. And yeah, I think it's one of those films that was when we were drawing up the list of, okay, what films do we want to cover on this pokey little podcast? Commando was right at the top. But yes, we have put it off for whatever reason.
We wanted to do it in the same room. Unfortunately, we're still doing these mostly remotely because I can't get a truck driver to take me over the channel. But it's been a long time coming, and it has landed like a greased up Arnold Schwarzenegger on Valverde Beach. I'm ready. I'm pumped, and I'm rowing for action.
In your Speedos.
In my Speedos, yeah. I mean, I was like, when's he going to get a wardrobe change? He's been wearing that shirt for the whole film. So, George, it's 1985. We've got this small film with up-and-coming star Arnold of the Schwarzenegger variety. How did we get this film?
So it's a bit of a funny one, this one, because I was thinking about this, and I'm going to sort of weave into first memories as well, because I think we watched these films all around like the same time. So Terminator, Commando, Aliens, Predator, they all sort of melded into one. Obviously, we were far too young to see them at the cinema, and it was quite a few years, a gap between watching them on home video. But when you actually think about it, this was Arnie's first proper action picture. So if you look at his career, he had done, obviously his first sort of features were the Conan films. And then he broke through with Terminator. And we've done Terminator 2. We haven't covered the Terminator yet. And if you think about it, Terminator, him lobbying for the role of the villain was a big gamble for him. He could have been typecast as a villain going forwards. But obviously it made him a huge star. And off the back of it, the new head of 20th Century Fox was like, this guy, Schwarzenegger, he's a phenomenon. And he said to the screenwriter, Steven D'Souza, if you can find a movie for him that can be done under 12 million, I'll greenlight it immediately. So
sold.
So yeah, it was a bit of a weird one. So Steven D'Souza started going through all the action scripts that Fox had, and they came across this one for Commando. It wasn't always a Schwarzenegger vehicle. It was a much more grounded affair. So the original script had been written by Jeff Loeb and Matthew Wiseman, who had written the film Teen Wolf. And Jeff Loeb would also go on to become quite big in the comic book world. So he wrote a lot of Batman graphic novels, and I think he's now a executive producer or quite high up in Marvel television.
That's where I know his name from. I think it's did he do The Dark Knight?
He might be credited.
Is he one of the writers? I think he's one of the writers on.
I think he might.
Dark Knight Returns,
or The Long Halloween, maybe.
That's the one. That's the one. The Long Halloween. Yeah.
So yeah, they'd written this gritty script. a downbeat story of a retired, world-weary Israeli super soldier called out of retirement. And obviously later in the pod, I'll talk about who was initially considered, and they were very different people, very far away from Arnold Schwarzenegger. However, Steven D'Souza rewrote it to fit Arnie's persona. And again, as I say, like, this was the first big Arnie action pick. And this was the first time, even though obviously in Terminator, you've got moments of dark humor that, you know, Cameron weaves in with the, you know, I'll be back and fuck you, asshole. But this was the first film that started laying the one-liners and the repeating one-liners. So it's very much a benchmark film for all the Arnie action films to come. And
this was the formula, like a Bond formula.
Yeah, this was the first film where it started the Arnie formula, essentially. And he said, you know, there's a great article in Empire magazine. They did a big celebration, and D'Souza said he read the script out to Arnie, and Arnie's like, I like this part. I'm not a robot from the future or a caveman from the past. I'm in clothes and having a family. It's a part John Wayne could play. I do this picture. So, yeah, for him, again, yeah, it was a first proper, you know, those roles that he'd dreamed of, you know, when he came to Hollywood, of being that big John Wayne-esque heroic character. As I mentioned in the intro, it's a Joel Silver production. And again, you know, Joel Silver would go on to do some of the biggest and loudest and most macho action movies of the 80s and 90s. You know, he's a regular...
A bit of a platform for him too. I mean, he's big now, but I mean, this you could say was the beginning of his, or in the middle of his rise.
Yeah, so his two films prior to this were The Warriors, which is on our retro revelations list, because neither you and I unbelievably haven't seen The Warriors.
I've seen half of it.
Doesn't count.
Doesn't count. I know. Probably half pregnant. Yeah.
And he also did 48 Hours with Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy. So relatively early on in Joe Silver's career, but obviously he would then go on to, you know, all the other films we've covered of his. So Predator, Lethal Weapon,
Die Hard,
Demolition Man, Die Hard, Matrix, and many, many more.
Many more.
Yeah, he was brought on board to produce it, and they brought on director Mark L. Lester. So he's usually, before this, was a veteran of loads of cult movies I've never heard of, in all honesty. But the film that brought him into the mainstream, which I haven't seen for a long time, is the Stephen King adaptation Firestarter with Drew Barrymore. Do you remember that film?
Yeah. That was nuts.
So yes, that was a film that sort of got him noticed, and then he went on to do Commando after this.
He does like to blow shit up.
He does like to blow shit up. So that's basically the sort of how it came to be. I mean, obviously I've got some sort of tidbits about casting and stuff along the way.
Let them come up as they do, because I think
do we want to talk about set the scene in terms of the rivalry with Stallone now?
I think it's probably worth mentioning where was Stallone at this point in his career, because these two films did overlap. I think everybody knows the behind the scenes chat of one was looking over the shoulder. I think I remember hearing Arnie say, yeah, but mine's going to be funnier and stand up the test of time longer, which is still today debatable. What was Stallone doing?
Well, Stallone, so I think, Rambo First Blood Part 2 came out as they were making Commando. So I think some people try and phrase this as a response to Rambo, but it was already being made when Rambo came out. So I think it was...
It just hadn't been finished when Rambo came out.
Yeah, whilst the rivalry was there, I don't think it was made as a response to Rambo. I think it was just like, again, like, you know, Arnie was desperate for a big heroic action picture. The studios, after Terminator, he was huge. So, you know, people wanted to make movies with him. And I think just the rivalry, because of, you know, they were the two big muscly guys in Hollywood, and they were obviously getting offered similar projects. There was that natural rivalry there.
It's just funny in that they're both funny. They're both funny one-man armies for different reasons. And in Rambo, it's because you're loving it, and it's like, oh my God, he's such a badass. And I think in Rambo, what Rambo creates is much more of a, you've got the movie term for this. It seems the stakes are higher. It's not as obvious in Rambo that he's going to make it out, whereas Commando is cartoonish in that he's like Jack Reacher, or Jack Reacher's like John Matrix. You work it out, but nobody can stop John Matrix.
I mean, we touched on this in our chat with Tymon in the last episode, that they're both very similar films. They're both wearing that sort of Reaganist politics, gung ho, right wing, America saves the day type, messaging. But they're both doing it very differently. So and they're both very comic book action, larger than life. But Rambo is, carrying over from its very grounded original, is very po-faced and takes itself
serious. It does, like a lot of Stallone, take himself very seriously. Like Stallone takes himself seriously, and just happens to be ridiculous. Whereas at least, with Commando, they're all saying from the very off, they knew it was always going to be tongue in cheek. They knew it was going to be larger than life, and the fact, fitting it to Schwarzenegger's persona, that he's this huge man mountain Austrian living in America, but for some reason, American special forces. Don't worry about that too much. Don't worry about that. There's a lot of don't worry about that, but that's what makes this film so great.
And look at that opening. I mean, once you get past what I call the
no. Which opening are you talking about?
I was going to say
General Kirby turns up. Or are you talking about the what is it? The montage.
I was going to say, you've got it's almost like a Bond-esque cold open with all these different people. Who are all these people getting killed off? Yeah. And could you really dive? Would you get enough run up in a car showroom to run somebody over? Never mind.
All I remember, George, is that I think these opening scenes were also the victims of tracking and recording off the telly back in the day, because I don't know if my memory serves me correctly, but I get the feeling that I'm sure the first version of Commando we watched started with him in the mountains. I think
probably.
It's very believable that it could be that. But
I didn't get to the press record in time. But yeah, the Arnie's entrance where he's
carrying a tree.
He's carrying a tree. He's got a chainsaw in one hand. He's surrounded by dried ice. It's amazing. and from that snapshot, it tells you everything you need to know about this film. Like, yes, it's going to be ridiculous. Yes, it's going to be awesome.
I just like to think that Michael Bay was watching this at university and going, I'm going to make films like this.
This is cinema.
Because it's just so nuts. He's got this, it's setting the scene. There's definitely, there's some very cute, sentimental music being played. Nothing could possibly go wrong.
Well, that's it. Like, he's a loving father. He's a family man. Let's get ice cream. Let's feed deer together. Let me turn you into a trained killer. That's the spin-off. I think Commando is very much, even though in some of the interviews I was reading, one with Vernon Wells who plays Bennett, and he was like, oh no, we were treating it properly seriously when we were making it. I just can't believe that in terms of some of the shots. Obviously, Stephen D'Souza's script, so many of the one-liners, they know it's ridiculous, and they're just like, I think they just get caught up into what the 80s was as, let's just make it bigger. Let's just go bigger and more ridiculous. It's fine.
I love that line that D'Souza says about how he's selling the thing you were talking about before. He's like, yeah, I'm a family man. I'll do this film. But D'Souza did an impression of Arnie when he was doing the Sully line.
Yeah.
Then apparently D'Souza's in front of Arnie going, and then you say, you'll know how I said I'd lied. And he's like, I totally forgot that I was doing an impression.
to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Of himself. But Arnie laughed and took it well. And we have Commando. But yeah, for me, and I think it's worth pointing this out, because I love the opening of this film. And as you say, it is like a Bond film. I mean, there's a lot of For Your Eyes Only going down the hill. I don't know which did it first or which did it better, but it doesn't matter at this stage. But it's very Bond-esque. It opens like raucous, loads of things happening. And then the kill count the kill count's kept. It's kept the last 20 minutes. And yes, obviously it does go redonkulous at the end. But throughout the film, there's a few hits, one in there. But it's a big opening, and then the story takes off. But what an opening. It's like seeing his house, seeing him being threatened and going down and getting his guns, and what can he do? I was thinking that because, again, you can touch on this better than me, but how influential this film is in terms of not just action movies and action cinema, but games as well, isn't it? And like one of the Call of Duty games, the mansion is in, I think it's Modern Warfare 2. Yes, I was going to say Modern Warfare 2. It's sold as being a different type of mansion, but you look at it and it's just lifted directly out of Commando, like all the stairways and everything. So it's fun to be running about there trying to not get killed by people. And that's it. I think it's been, it's so influential on like loads of 80s arcade games as well. And in terms of, that one-man army, man with the big chain gun, just mowing down people. But yeah, as you say, it starts off as an almost wrong foots you because so they've got his daughter, and I kind of forgot this until somebody mission. So yeah, somebody brought it up on Twitter recently saying the film wrong foots you because it's like you've got Dan Hedaya hamming it up as, the evil general. He's, the dad from Clueless. Yeah. And he's like, you must go to Valverde and kill the president. He will know, he trusts you. Because, he obviously got rid of this evil general. And it's like, it's going to be it's assassination. It's going to be, what's the French one? I was going to say, not Fourth Protocol. Day of the Jackal. It's going to be Day of the Jackal. Yeah, Arnie's going to be, pushed into this thing, and it's like, they've got my daughter. I've got to do it, and it's like, no, scrap that. Yeah, he's going to. He's too badass. He's too badass for that. So yeah, it does that wrong footingness, and then it turns into it's a race against time. Why do we know it's a race against time, Charlie? I don't know. Is it because he keeps looking at a certain clock? Beep. Beep, beep. I mean, which 24 would take on years later to an amazing success in terms of creating tension. They stole it from Commando. I mean, they've created, Steven D'Souza's created this fictional country of Valverde, which has its own little cinematic universe. So Valverde is some fictional, South American country. We don't know exactly where it is, but it crops up again in Die Hard 2. We covered this in our live show that we did on Die Hard. Yes. I think one of the audience members asked about it. And Steven D'Souza, even though I don't think he was involved in writing Predator, he has come on record saying that Predator is set in Valverde, even though there is conflicting reports. Again, it's an unnamed South American country, but it's basically so Hollywood can get away with saying it's not Nicaragua, it's not Cuba, we're not offending anybody. It's just some corrupt South American country. Yeah, don't worry about that. But I felt like an 11-hour plane ride was very far away from America, but don't worry about that. Convenient plot device. But I noticed there's moments in this where I feel like Arnie hasn't properly shaken off his Terminator acting, because he does a bit of the side eye when he's like, and there's a bit where he's being forced onto the plane and he's just staring at the undercarriage of the plane. And it's like, okay, Arnie, we get it. You're checking out your escape route. But it's almost like he's like very machine-like in some of his stuff. It's like, okay, he's still in Terminator mode. We'll get it on the social medias. George, I think it's one of our favorite GIFs. It's I think they call it a reverse or a rotating boomerang. Yeah, the boomerang of Arnie diving for cover when they first attack his log cabin and coming back up again. For me, it's one of the best GIFs ever, because it's the look on his face. It's like pure Terminator rage. And it's just like, he goes up to 11 and then he's out of shot. He's just dropped to the deck, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Have at it. It's on, what's the GIF? The GIF on its media something. There's tons of them, but check it out. It's brilliant. There's a few good Commando ones. There's the other one I shared with you is when he's shaking Sully in the phone box, and it's just on repeat, him shaking with glass falling out, looking very angry. I like to think what happened in that scene is that Arnie, go nuts, improvise as you like, in like the stage directions where Matrix removes Sully from the phone box. Because I mean, it's everyone talks talks about that. It's like, oh yeah, he's carrying trees, he's lifting,
pushing cars, ripping out car seats.
But to be fair to him, he wanted to do all of his own stunts. We both know he's always said, people pay to see me. That I want to do as many of the stunts before, even though I think in some of the driving scenes, George, there's one or two delicious stuntmen.
I mean, all of the stunt drivers. Yeah, there's the bit where, when they're following Sully and the stunt drivers, because they're both convertible cars. So Sully's stunt driver has a very big wig on.
And he's much taller
much taller. Well, I mean, it's not hard. David Patrick Kelly is quite a small man, bless him. And Ray Dawn Chong, is it Cindy? She's got her big afro. It's probably on a guy.
It's probably a guy.
Probably a guy. So yes, there's some. I mean, this film has got some. No, I was thinking that because it's got some very obvious stunt drivers. But I was actually impressed with. I watched this on my projector at home, and I was impressed with the stunts in this because there's like, I know Arnie, reading into it, he did do a lot of his stunts and he did get quite injured on this. But there's a bit where he comes out of the mall and he gets run over by Sully and it properly rolls over, and I'm just like, I don't think that is Arnie, but it's a very good, because they've done it with the lighting, it's a very good stuntman if it is, because he properly rolls off the car. And I'm like, I don't think that they would have done that with him. And the bit where he's hanging off the plane, that's him. It's obviously not a plane, but it's very well done. It's
him in front of a really big wind machine.
Yes, going quite fast. There are some, on the most part, there are some, the stunt work with Arnie is very impressive. The continuity is not so impressive.
There are, we're not talking about the end yet, are we? No,
we're talking about the bit where he wrecks, there's Sully's car,
Porsche
and he flips it over, flips her over.
And it started first time.
And not a scratch on it. On it. But we're kind of all over the place here, but I think, David Patrick Kelly as Sully is so delightful.
What's the word we use? Seething. He's like hissable.
He's such a hissable villain, and he's so sleazy. He's like, the rat face guy from The Rock. You want him to suffer.
Yeah, but he is brilliant at it. He's got
fucking whore.
And he has that when we get to our revelations of covering the Warriors. He's a very, very big actor. That was one of his first films.
Yes, it was. And I think that's it. Like, from reading Timon Singh's book, I think he's from like quite a big theatre background and took like his performances quite seriously. And I think this role was kind of like, paying the bills. And I don't think he reflects on it very fondly of like, I think he sees it as one of his lesser roles, even though he is great as the bad guys, one of the bad guys you love to hate.
But it's it's the fact that it survives longer than the film itself. That how I said I lied. It's gone everywhere. It's gone as far. It's been in The Simpsons. You've got with McBain talking to his food, going, how I said I'd eat you last. So it's subverted. You could imagine him being a bit annoyed, being such a thesp and coming from that background. But for the thing we keep going back to in a lot of the films that we cover is the character acting, not just the villains. Yes, these are mostly villains because Arnie's the sole good guy in this, but the character acting is top dog. You've got him delivering this. He's in it for a very short amount, and he's in it for 3 or 4 scenes?
Yeah.
And he knocks it out of the park, and he's remembered forever. And I love the fact that when Arnie's holding him over the edge, he's struggling to talk. Yeah. I think that's something that really holds up today. It's like, he's obviously he was in peak condition, took his physique very seriously. That was the other reason he said he didn't want to have a stunt double, is because he's so big. Nobody could replicate my body. I love that confidence. It's like, it wouldn't be fair to the fans.
Yeah.
So but let's talk about his leading lady, He's with the lady.
What?
Do they have an affair? Do they not? Is it Ray Dawn?
Chong. Ray Dawn Chong. Yeah.
She apparently was not, probably not first, because I think this was originally written for a Caucasian actress, but stole the show.
We'll get to that in Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda.
Okay, sorry, I'll pipe down.
But I've got my notes. I remember her being like, as a kid watching this, but far too young. I remember finding her really annoying. But she's brilliant in this, and she is the one person that realizes how ridiculous it is. And I think she actually improved a lot of her lines, I can't believe this macho bullshit. And
exactly.
She's the one that brings it down a touch by saying, yes, we know it's silly because
it's tongue in cheek, like what you were saying before. She's the proof. She's the we've talked about this on other episodes where we're looking at it a little bit at times through her eyes. So cut this macho bullshit. Like what? It's like, this is insane.
Yeah, and and she's not a damsel in distress, which is refreshing. She's actually got agency. She helps Matrix. She flies the plane. She works out.
She knows how to read flight charts. She knows about the military training nearby, and exactly. She knows that Bill Paxton will probably be manning a radar somewhere nearby. I always love seeing him in that film. He's like, when are you going to put me in a big film, Arnie? Because they obviously worked together on Terminator.
Yeah, that's I was like, Bill Paxton.
You first hear his voice. It's his voice you hear first. Like, is that Bill Paxton? And then he gets some screen time.
I think she's great, and I think she, as I say, she brings an agency to the role. She plays off Arnie well. His very sort of monosyllabic stoicness. She brings that hysteria to it, but it works.
What I want to say is we normally, George and I in preparation, obviously the whole idea of this is we go and watch the film again. Sometimes we like to watch them together. We like to do a watch along together. But this time it was like, no, we just need to watch it. We're going to do it. And I've watched this film, I think, in the last week 2.5 times because I kept getting to
because I love it so much.
No, but there's just this one scene in the middle. I was like, has he been to the gun shop yet? I don't know what it is about this film, but I love the fact that he's so particular. And it's very, I guess you could say, a kid's dream. It's going into the candy store.
Oh, I remember my mind being blown watching that as a kid. I just want to go to America and see an army surplus.
I just want to go to America and buy guns.
Buy some claymores.
We talk about, we started this podcast in that we grew up in these films for escapist reasons, living in the northeast of England with a lot of bad weather. But, you imagine seeing this. We're just like, you can buy grenades and shotguns in a
rocket launchers.
It was nuts. And the fact that he gets caught by the cops and they are not messing about, the cops. The fact that I just love the way that's set up, that she manages to get all the shopping away, but then he gets busted. I think it's very, because we talk about how short this film is. It's really economic.
It's an hour and a half.
It's an hour and a half, just like any good film comedy should be. Mm. And so Ray turns up. She grabs the rocket launcher, and Arnie can't believe how she got it to work. And she's like, I just read the instructions, you daft ape. So I think I do like that line from her. I didn't know she improv that. But then we get on to the most beautiful, one of the best lines ever, the what you eat for breakfast. We've got Mr. Bill Duke. It's none other.
Come on, motherfucker.
I love that. I think it's realistic in how short it is, considering if they are both that well trained, it would be over very quickly. But it's pretty brutal.
And with any 80s fight, you in a motel, you have to go through the wall and there's a couple having sex in the next room. Show a bit of boobs.
You've got to go next door for some TNA, bro. Got it. We need the people who pay tickets for this money. It's the 80s. They need a little bit of TNA. We're going to bust in next door.
If there's not going to be a sex scene with you and Ray Dawn Chong, we're going to make sure somebody's having sex in this picture.
I just like to think that was actually a real motel and they break in next door and it was an accident. No, but but Bill, because I forget, we've watched this film so many times. Bill Duke is actually at the beginning. He's one of the garbage men. And isn't Bennett driving the garbage truck? That was way over my head back in the day.
No, because they fake it out that he's one of the ones that he's on the boat.
No. Yeah, Bennett gets blown up on the boat, of course, yeah.
I mean, they don't explain how he gets off the boat, but don't worry about that.
Yeah, don't worry. He's got a scuba suit attached to the floor.
I mean, it seems quite an elaborate fake out.
So we've gone through all of this. They've worked out the flight path, and he's doing some sleuthing. He's proving that he could do Bond. He's putting some seeds in James Cameron's mind about True Lies. You know, he's like, I can snoop, I can stealth. And then before you know it, we're on to, well, I mean, is it worth talking about Arnie taking out a Jeep from like 200 yards with an Uzi? The accuracy thing. Let's not worry about that. We're going to Valverde, baby. We're on a plane.
I got confused because there's obviously, I thought, hang on, how does he get to Valverde and how did they get to Valverde before his plane arrives? But it's Valverde is one thing where they need is the side plot, but then they're going to the general's got this island compound that's just off California, so that they're different things.
I'm confused. The geography goes all over the place because at the very end, when the plane takes off, I'm sure that pier is from California.
Yeah. So they're saying, it's just off. Is it San Bernardo or something like that? Or
San Fernando.
But yeah, basically, I always thought I was like, hang on, he gets off the plane. And then Jenny's taken to Valverde by boat, but gets there before the plane. It doesn't, but no, it's two different things. There's Valverde, and then there's the General's Island compound, which is just off the Californian coast, conveniently.
I don't think any of that matters, George. It didn't matter then. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't, because I'll be back, Bennett. We have skirted around the villain of every great hero needs a good villain, Charlie.
I just like to. The thing you've got to point about Bennett is that there's hammy acting, and we've had so much of that in the films we've covered on this podcast. There's a lot of hammy bad guys. There's some intelligent guys. There's some seriously terrifying ones. Then there's Alan Rickman. And then there's somebody who's like this. It's
in his own niche.
It's just like, I love the fact that, you know, the story behind the scenes was that Bennett turned up, came on the set, and Arnie was like, I don't think this guy's got what it takes. How is he going to be a convincing bad guy? And it's because Vernon was being so nice back set and chatting to everyone. And he's like,
he's a laid back Australian.
He's a lovely, with the best accent in the world. So lovely guy getting on with everyone. And Arnie's like, I don't see this working. And then they have this first scene and he just goes at him with a knife. And from that moment on, he was like, I don't want to be left in the room with him alone. And he only uses a plastic knife from now on. So that is how...
It's a joke knife.
It's a joke knife. It's a joke knife, Arnold. But it just shows Vernon Wells' capability.
Bless him. So, Vernon Wells, I mean, we talked about him in, of all films, Weird Science. Because... Joel Silver, again, Weird Science is a Joel Silver production. Vernon Wells
does nuts. I need somebody who does nuts.
Well, yeah, he the Mad Max 2, also known as The Road Warrior in America, was such a huge hit, and he's obviously the villain in that. And yeah, Joel Silver was desperate to get him in his films because he's such an intense presence. But bizarrely, he wasn't originally cast as a villain. It was somebody else that was apparently fired on the first day. And the producers had to, quickly recast it. So yeah, they got Vernon Wells in, flew him in from Australia, and put him straight into wardrobe. And he
came out wearing a chainmail vest.
No, but the thing is, Vernon Wells was a lot bigger than the other actor, and that's why it's quite tight fitting.
Shows off the package, shows off the Wells.
But I noticed when I was watching it the other night that you hear Bennett, because you hear his chainmail before he appears on screen.
I noticed this. I blame the Blu-ray, the high definition sound audio quality for this, because I was watching this. I think I finally finished this film off on, it was Saturday or Sunday evening. And it's just like, all you can hear is the twinkle, twinkle. It's like he's playing with his dog tags, he's playing with his knife, and all you can hear is like, there's a microphone under that chainmail somewhere.
Hello, John.
Hello, John. I like your guys. Everything he says is
you
like
pissant guys.
Me and Matrix.
That was my favorite line.
Him fantasizing about him and Matrix killing everyone he's working for.
No, but he just goes, if Matrix were here, he'd be laughing too.
Yeah, I mean, they say Matrix, it's not gay. They say it's not homoerotic. They say he's just fanatical about killing him. But the delivery's brilliant. It's just so camp. According
to, again, in this Empire feature, Mark Lester, the director, said, when I chose Bennett's costume, I wanted it to look punk rock, like a punk look. But
something like out of Mad Max.
Yeah, and people said it looks like gay leather gear. That was never the intention. He said, yes, he's infatuated with Arnold's character, but in an innocent way.
Yeah, but Vernon Wells says he was infatuated with killing him.
Yes.
But before we talk about that end fight between the two of them, let's talk about the original suiting up. Now, what I want to ask you before we talk about this scene, is there something similar in Rambo?
Yeah, well, in Rambo, obviously you
like
get
the cut, chomp, 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 chomp.
Yeah,
chomp,
but
good to go.
But it's quite early on in Rambo because he gets all like his gear in Rambo,
and then he has to cut it loose,
and then he cuts it loose, and he only gets left with his
knife
and his trusty exploding arrows. But then in Rambo 2, you also get 2 suiting up scenes because you've kind of got the bit at the start where he's getting all the gear, and then later when the love of his life that he's just met. You take me to America, and she gets killed, and he does the sort of suiting up or muscling up in the rain. God, I can't wait to cover that film.
Oh my God, I'm so aroused.
So aroused by Reagan politics.
Need to go back to Vietnam, show those guys who are boss.
Do we get to win this time?
No, George, hold it back. We'll cover it at some point. And okay. We've done enough Joel Silver this year to be high as kites. So bringing it back to Commando, the suiting up scene. So we've seen them
more dried ice.
Yeah, we've seen. I know there is a little bit of dry ice in this film. So we've seen them do the shopping. She's dropped him off in the plane taxi.
He's got into his speedos, his Austrian speedos.
What we call the unnecessary speedo rowing scenes. But it floats your boat literally in this. Pecs are rumbling. He arrives, gets suited up. And what a scene. The fact that you're carrying too much, like he's got chomp, 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 chomp.
Well, no, I think it's one of the gags in Loaded Weapon where he gets all suited
falls
up.
Over.
He's got so much gear on, and it's true. It's ridiculous, like how much gear he's.
Okay, so can I just recap what I saw being bought in the store versus what he took with him? So 2 fully automatic assault rifles.
Yeah.
2 shotguns.
Yeah.
Right. You can't go anywhere. We're just carrying the guns with no ammo in them, right?
I think at least 4 claymores.
I think there's 4, 5 maybe. Yeah, carrying at least 4 claymores, 4 grenades. He's got his knife. He's got his
rocket launcher.
And then he's got his Desert Eagle and rocket launcher. Am I leaving anything out? And then the rest he just picks up. Oh, what, this machine gun? Yeah, this light machine gun. But it's still a scene to behold. Release dry ice. And then we get to see some of the most economic use of stuntmen that I think has ever been known. Am I right, George? Is this a suspicious stuntman occurrence?
Oh, very much so. I mean, apparently, according to D'Souza, so Rambo 2 or First Blood Part 2 came out whilst they were making this, and
one of them got a sneak peek.
Marco Lester
come out.
When Marco Lester went to see it, got a sneak preview, and he realized how many people Stallone kills in Rambo First Blood Part 2. And this is the line, I love this quote. He said to D'Souza, "We got to have a bigger dick than Rambo. We got to slay more people."
And get me more stuntmen.
And D'Souza, admits, he goes, originally in his script, there was some plausibility. It's the dictator's living on a private island, so he's going to have a few dozen security forces. But he said, after seeing Rambo, it got out of hand, and it was like we were killing more and more stuntmen, over 100 people. And Mark Lester also goes on to say, a lot of stuntmen were getting reused. They were putting on new costumes and mustaches and hairs. The same guy might play 4 parts.
I was really looking for that this time I watched, because you told me about this.
There's a lot of dodgy. There's a lot of tashes going on, and a lot of them are very obviously stick-on mustaches.
That's what I was going to say to you. It wasn't the fact that these guys were wearing like mustaches. It was the fact they looked like they died, gone backstage, and had someone had forced just very quickly rushed a mustache on them. They'd gone back out again to get killed again. Because, there's the same guy. And to be fair, they're all kind of, for this being set in, Vinavilla, they're not all Hispanic looking. They've all been give them dark hair and mustaches. No one will tell the difference. And to be fair, blink and you miss it. We probably didn't back then. They're just like, we take it. They're local inhabitants.
And not in HD quality. The other thing that I don't know when I noticed this, but I definitely noticed it this time around. So, for the money shot where he's planted all the bombs,
the explosion.
The explosion that you see from multiple angles.
The mannequins.
See two soldiers in front of the buildings quite clearly on sticks and the explosions going off.
And they don't move. They don't move.
It's just sort of like, if you're going to use mannequins...
Why put them on sticks? Why not just have them there and then the force of the explosion blow them around like a rag doll?
Maybe they just didn't have enough explosives to put on the sticks as well and just thought, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
But
the fire will...
It's the fact that it's so blatantly wood, because it's a physical explosion. The explosion is real. It's impressive. Yeah. It blows everything out. And you just see these
scarecrows, effectively.
Let's call them soldier crows. You just see their clothes get blown off and they start getting blackening and they're like, the wood literally catches fire. And you're like, those are wood mannequins. Thank you for the physical explosions. No, thank you. It's brilliant. You thought mustaches was the smallest problem.
Oh, yeah. But then suddenly, we're at the dictator's
climax,
his house, and everyone is getting killed. They're in the Rose Garden, and I'm pretty sure it's the same mansion from Beverly Hills Cop, because it's the old silent movie star Harold Lloyd's old estate. So it's quite a famous house in Beverly Hills. It's gunishment. It's fantastic.
It's turned up to 11, lots of breaking windows. I really feel sorry for I think one of our followers on Facebook said, that scene where Arnie's using a rose bush for cover is amazing. Yeah. But the guy that I feel really sorry for is the guard with a cigar. The guard who's heard all the noise and he's waiting round a corner while smoking a cigar as Arnie's stalking the house. And it's just like, this guy knows Arnie's coming. This guy's going to stand up to him. Are they going to have a one-on-one? Is he going to be the henchman? No, he's dead. he's dead. One shot, bam, he's down. And the Corriega guy, he turns up with this an impressive machine gun and they have a little bit of a battle, but has a gruesome death.
Just gloss over that because it's all about the main showdown, which is very convenient.
I don't need to go, John!
But again, it's things you just take for granted as a kid and whatever. It's like, how big is this basement underneath this mansion villa? It's like an industrial complex underneath this villa.
I think the airport in Die Hard 2 is smaller.
Well, funnily enough, there was a different ending originally scripted, but they basically spent all their money on stuntmen. But
on mustaches. We blew all of our budget on mustaches.
Guys, look we've spent all the money on mustaches.
We spent $70,000 on wigs.
How are we going to hold up these mannequins? It's all right. I've got some.
I've got a plan. You're going to nail them to the floor? Won't that look stupid? Don't worry about it. The explosions will cover everything.
But the original ending sounds awesome, and it was supposed to end with Bennett and Matrix chasing each other on speedboats. Then they land on an island where the Marines do their training and fight with knives on the beach, with barbed wire everywhere, landmines going off, and naval gunships firing at them. It would have been
Christ. That's like Face Off meets Enter the Dragon meets Bad Boys 2. Do it.
Yeah, do it. It sounds awesome. But D'Souza says, unfortunately, we spent all our money killing 150 people, so we had to shoot the scene in a basement instead.
Wigs, mustaches, and chopping the tops of people's heads off with some sort of saw blade.
So yes, you've got the big face-off in the industrial furnace underneath this building and some very, very homoerotic lines. Come on, Bennett. You want to stick it in me?
Put the knife in me, Bennett.
Come on, twist it. Go on, let's party. I don't need the girl, John.
I just love the way he loses his shit. That is his acting. Turned up to 11 is the fact that I think what I would relate this to is Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill, is that it's proper crazy. Like you see him and he's like, he acts like a crazy person does, not an actor trying to look crazy.
Yeah.
I think like Christopher Walken is a very believable psychopath, smart and twisted. And it's the same here. You can see Bennett all being cool and like me and Matrix would kill all your guys. And then when he finally meets his target, he loses it and he's sweating and he's nuts and he's sexy and
he's been dreaming about this moment.
But it's like you see the rage in his eyes.
I want to know what did Matrix do to Bennett?
What did Matrix do to his team? Because they're all at interesting ages, and like that's the sequel that we need. We need the prequel. Don't make the sequel. Make the prequel. Get somebody. Get Rami Malek to play young Bennett. You know, he's got the Freddie Mercury going on.
Don't it?
No, but it's a good fight. We've got another one-liner. And then we've got it once again back to the Bond trope, you know, they turn up at the final hour. There's always the reunion. I can remember joking about this with John Glendinning about how Alyssa Milano's character Jenny has never met Cindy, and they hug as if they're long lost pen pals. It stuck out back then when we were really young, but we used to look out for those types of things.
Well, no, we're going to have to whether we feature it at the end of this episode, and we'll also put a link to it. But there's we talked about it in our Predator episode of Predator the musical, but the same guys who do that on YouTube, they do Commando the musical, and I just remember that at the end of the song, it's like, Jenny, here's your new mother.
It adds gravitas to certain
Jenny and me, Bennett and me.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. So we've talked a lot about the characters who featured in this film, but who didn't make the cut, George? I think is it time for some coulda, woulda, shoulda?
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
So coulda, woulda, shoulda is where George enlightens me and the rest of us to the actors that were considered for the roles or approached or casted, auditioned, but didn't get it. So who have we got?
So as I said earlier on...
I mean, it must have always been an Arnie picture, right?
No, wrong. Right? So yeah, this wasn't always an Arnie vehicle. So back when it was a grounded, downbeat take about an Israeli soldier who's turned his back on violence, originally it was bizarrely Kiss frontman Gene Simmons was in the frame.
Explain. What the fuck?
I think because he kind of looks Israeli, he could get away. I know, like Gene Simmons cropped up in a few films in the 80s. So I'm not sure. He obviously had a good agent, but then later, and this kind of makes sense when you realize Joel Silver and 48 Hours was involved, because that was Nick Nolte was choking to death with my homeless clothes. So yeah, Nick Nolte.
We do love Nick Nolte.
Please don't come after us, Mr. Nolte. So yes, he was in the frame, but they both turned it down. Apparently, something about it being too silly. But then in terms of, as you said, in regards to the role of Cindy, Ray Dawn Chong nailed it in the auditions. But apparently, according to Mark and Lester, they saw practically every hot actress in Hollywood at the time. And some of the names included Sharon Stone and Bridget Nielsen, who obviously would both go on to star with...
Bridget Nielsen, Arnie, that'll never work. Sharon Stone, Arnie, that'll never work.
So yes, they're two very different actresses and some very different actors as well. Could have gone very differently.
Gene Simmons, just you're gonna perform your greatest hits, right? Wrong.
He would definitely do the awesome theme tune, not theme tune, the rock tune at the power ballad at the end. What a track! The power station.
We fight for
love.
I guess it's just the narrative tied up into a wonderful bunch. So I think it's probably a good time to point out we had Timon Singh on our show recently. We talked about many different villains and bad guys. And after we'd finished recording, we asked him, because he's got some seriously behind the scenes stories to be shared. He's, had his forward done by Stephen D'Souza.
And he's interviewed Vernon Wells, Bill Duke, David Patrick Kelly.
So he gave us his insight into what went on behind the camera and some other nuggets that you might not have heard before. Here it is, Timon Singh talking about Commando.
So Tymon, what are your first memories of Commando?
So this might shock you as someone who kind of loves action films and writes it, but back in the day, when I was a kid, 7 or 8, I was very squeamish when it came to on-screen violence. I was kind of terrified by it. I remember one Christmas, everyone in my family was watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and there's the scene with the Black Knight. And I walked in, and the arm comes off, and blood squirting everywhere, and I was just like, no, and just walked out kind of like very pale. And then there was another time when we were at my uncle's house, and him and my dad were watching Predator, and I walked in to say good night to them, and Bill Duke's head just explodes on the screen. And I was like, and I'm leaving. But
nightmares for me.
Exactly. And then it was like, I think I was at 8 or 9. I had a friend called Michael, and I would go around to his house, and we would have sleepovers and watch movies. And he would introduce me to basically all these films that his dad had on video. And we'd watch stuff like The Running Man and Mad Max 2 and all these kind of great, 80s action films. And I think it was Commando that kind of got me over my squeamishness.
It's not real.
Yeah. It's so over the top and comically violent that I was like, this is great. It's like a live action Tom and Jerry cartoon. It's, someone getting hit in the frying pan and their face is like embedded in the frying pan. It's that level of violence. So I just remember it in, my friend kind of pointing out that Arnie's gun never seems to run out of ammo, or, where he's just picking up David Patrick Kelly and dropping him off things, or where he cuts off the guy's arm and then slaps him with his own arm. It's that kind of level where I was like, this is great fun. And I think that was probably the film where I kind of got over my initial squeamishness of gore and blood. Because once you've got Arnie using a rose bush for cover while gunning down like an entire South American army, you're like, I'm okay. I'm okay now. More violence. Give me more.
It's that outrageousness. And that was, you've answered all my follow-up questions to say is why is it so beloved? And I think that's it. It stands the test of time in terms of it is ridiculous, but they're kind of in on the joke rather than, as you say, with First Blood Part 2, it is ridiculous and Stallone's not in on the joke.
No. Like the Fast and Furious films, everyone's in on the joke apart from Vin Diesel, who thinks he's in Hamlet. Yeah,
oh, absolutely. From your books and the film that you did, you've interviewed a lot of the cast of Commando. So you've interviewed Vernon Wells, who obviously plays Bennett, David Patrick Kelly, who plays Sully. You've interviewed the great Bill Duke, and you were saying you've also interviewed Mark L. Lester and Stephen D'Souza as well. He was the writer, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
So you must have some great stories from those guys. What were the sort of the best anecdotes that cropped out of all of those interviews? Is there anything that springs to mind?
The one story that when I first met Stephen E. D'Souza, I was kind of look, I keep hearing this rumor that Die Hard was meant to be a sequel to Commando. Is this true? And he went, no, that's total bullshit. And I was like, why do I keep hearing this then? He was like, okay, let me tell you. And he told me what the plot to Commando 2 was going to be. And it was going to be set in a skyscraper. Essentially, after the events of Commando, John Matrix is a bit of a superstar. And he sets up a private security firm. It's like the best in the best. He hires ex-special forces. He gets, special security systems. And one of his clients gets him to essentially security-proof this building. And I think Rae Dawn Chong's in it, but she's now an investigative reporter. and she finds out that his client is actually, a front for a drug smuggling scheme. And the film was going to end with Rae Dawn Chong and Jenny being kidnapped by Matrix's client, and Matrix has to break into the building that he's equipped with all these security features to rescue them. So he's got to overcome his own security force.
Shut up and take my money.
Yeah. And Stephen E. D'Souza was like, I think because it was set in a skyscraper, there's lots of,
crosswired.
Yeah. It's a man breaking into a skyscraper to rescue his loved ones. And that's where the confusion has lied. And that was going to be the plot of Commando 2.
Yeah. I remember that rumor going around for years. And obviously, before the internet, everyone's saying, "Oh yeah, that's how it turned out." They just changed the names and stuff. Like, but yes, I remember reading it was something similar. I don't know if it was an interview, the interview you had with yourself, but I remember reading Stephen E. D'Souza. It might have been every year when it comes around, the ever-going debate of is Die Hard a Christmas movie, and I think he came out with some other stuff to say about it. So there's been rumors of a remake of Commando for years. I think even John Cena was tagged for it. In this day and age, do you think it could even work? Because as we said, it was ridiculous at the time, but it kind of worked because of it was the height of the big muscle bound.
It was sending a message. It was basically sending a message that these certain parts of the world, there's loads of people who are bad and we need to go and take them out. That was the kind of the Reagan message you mentioned earlier. And they just all fall into that category. And where would that sit today? It's like, we're going to make a film. It would have to, for me, it would have to be sending a different message. And as Tymon pointed out earlier, what are the Fast and Furious doing? They're kind of doing the same thing.
Exactly.
All of the bad guys in that.
Commando's already been remade a bunch of times, like by Russia, and, where they've got, it's essentially a shot-for-shot remake, but with a big Russian guy. And the action film trope of former special forces guy has family member abducted, that is a genre unto itself. Taken is essentially Commando. Fast and Furious 8, it's like...
Oh, they've got my son.
Exactly, they've got my son. Anything where... so-and-so's family members kidnapped, that is essentially Commando. So the idea of remaking Commando when you've got all these Liam Neeson, Frank Grillo, Bruce Willis films is just an exercise in redundancy. It's kind of like when they remade Point Break when you already had the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Yeah.
It's like the Fast and the Furious is the remake of Point Break. Why are you doing a remake of Point Break? It's completely redundant. Yeah. And as a result, no one saw it.
Actually, just talking about that now, that's just reminded me that basically, it was last year, Charlie and I covered Bad Boys 1 and 2. And basically the ending of Bad Boys 2 turns into Commando because they go to... They go to Cuba. They manage to get all this military support, and there's a big mansion, and it's being destroyed. It's just like, where did this come from? Who came up with this idea?
But exactly. It's the whole trope of action hero must go save his daughter. That's not exactly something groundbreaking that people are going to be like, I've never seen that before. So
it's a fresh take on the story.
Yeah, I remember with Taken, because we obviously loved the first Taken. I saw that when I was backpacking in Argentina with another English guy. I was like, yes, an English guy, let's go see this film. And loving it. And then there's obviously Taken 2. And George jokingly said to me, or read online or something like, Taken 3, it's the dog. They've taken the dog.
But it wasn't he himself was taken. It's like, your mother and I have been taken. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's...
Just don't say kidnapped. Don't use the word kidnapping. We have to say taken. We're not sure why, but...
It's crazy. I think the ones that would really make a difference is, I think on Twitter about a year ago, someone was going, here's an idea. Instead of making Die Hard 5, remake Die Hard, but instead of John McClane, it's Charlize Theron, and she's got to rescue her wife, and it's a big lesbian action story. And I'm like, at least that's a unique idea. Let's do that. Yeah, it's like Charlize Theron is former special forces, and they kidnap her boyfriend, and or girlfriend, and she's just got to wade through bad guys. It's like, yeah, instead of like the big muscular guy, let's shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, I'd watch that. I mean, I thought Atomic Blondes, I thought that whilst the story's a bit thin, it's I love the style, the look, and obviously, as you were saying, at 8711, that the fights are always going to be brilliantly choreographed.
There was this good Vietnamese film a few years ago called Fury, Furie, with Veronica Go, who was in The Old Guard and also The Last Jedi. And she's essentially like a Vietnamese mafia hit woman who's retired, and then they kidnap her daughter to get her back in the game. And then she just starts wading through all these Vietnamese crime gangs to get her daughter back. And I was like, there you go. Commando in Vietnam with a woman. That's all you need.
John Wick.
Nice.
Yeah.
They got my dog.
Yeah, kill my dog. Exactly. So
I'm going to kill everyone.
It's just title recognition that studios are going for. And I think absolutely. Audiences have kind of cottoned onto that. They're like, there's nothing a remake of Commando would offer that I don't think anything else in the past 10 years has provided. Has not already provided.
There is one thing that could be interesting, and this was my final question for you. Obviously, you've interviewed Vernon Wells.
Yeah.
Is Bennett in love with John Matrix? Is it real love, or is it just
PTSD?
I did ask him this, and he didn't seem to, indicate that was what he was going for, but he seems perfectly fine with it these days. So, because I also asked about his character in Mad Max 2. I was like, it was quite progressive to see like a homosexual henchman. And he was like, that's not what I was going for. The guy, the golden
Why does everyone think I'm so camp?
Yeah, the golden-haired guy at the beginning was meant to be my adopted son, who I saved from like Ravagers that you would have seen or was in the script, and he's and who I'm grooming to be my replacement. And then he's killed. It's like the loss of a son. And then he's like, for a few years, I was kind of annoyed that people thought my character was gay because obviously it's the 80s and homophobia was just a way of life. But I think these days he's just kind of like mellow to it, and it's just kind of like, I see where they're coming from and I don't mind.
Finally.
Yeah. So it's just kind of, it's interesting what you kind of see in a film, and everyone just sees the intense homoeroticism between Matrix and Bennett. And I think he's like, hey, the leather outfit is not helping things here, but that's not what we're going for.
That chainmail vest.
The chainmail, the Stoker's vest, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all the sort of the questions I've got for you for Commando, but thank you very much for that, Tymon.
George, what else can we say about this film that hasn't already been said? I mean, we've only got one shot at this. What else do you want to talk about?
You only get one shot. So yeah, I mean, in summary, yes, it's ridiculous, but it's a very important film in Arnie's career in terms of, as I say, it's the first film to really do the Arnie formula. It is a larger than life film, but it kind of knows it is. It's an hour and a half long, It's in and out. It does as what you need to. It's very much a comfort film, but yeah, it's not up there with Arnie's greatest films. If you look at Predator, it takes elements of this formula, the one-liners, and he's another Commando essentially, but it's much more grounded. Even though he's fighting a big alien, it's a much more serious take. But yeah, there's a lot of fun in this film. I don't know what else there is to say, really. It's an interesting when you trace it back to seeing that's how Arnie's action career pretty much starts from this film.
I think for me, I'm just going to go full Daily Mail. When people say this is a rib-rolling roller coaster ride of it, what's come up on our podcast before is that, talking about another of Arnie films, which we've covered, Terminator 2, is it the greatest action film of all time? Is it the greatest sci-fi of all time? Probably not the sci-fi, but it's somewhere in between the two. Whereas with Commando, you can say with tongue in cheek, the greatest film of all time. Because you're on the same page. It's a comedy. It's taking the piss out of itself. It's ridiculous. It's turned up to 11. And for anybody listening to this podcast who will have grown up with this film, it is what it is. It's It's why we have, it's kind of what separates the wheat from the chaff. It's like, if we're going to spend a lot of money on a film, have lots of special effects, what does our audience want to see? And this film gives it all.
But saying that, that's something I haven't really commented on. It only had a budget of around 10 million, which probably back in the mid 80s was a healthiest budget. But if you look at, less than 6 years later, Terminator 2 is 100 million, the most expensive film ever made. So yes, as we've picked on, there are some bits where the budget is showing with stuntmen, people on poles, that sort of thing. And the fact it's all filmed in California.
So just in the interest of keeping the length of this episode shorter than the film itself, which is
hopefully.
I'm not. Hey, sometimes we fail. It's like some of the rules in life are there to be broken. We could talk about Commando for hours, but
this is episode 1 of 4, right?
Yeah, it's a mini series. We're selling it to Netflix. It's only 9 hours.
There's one thing I forgot to say. I'm pretty Arnie is ripped in this film, right? And he's wearing some very tight pants where his buttocks are quite clearly on show. Either he's wearing a thong or has he gone commando? So I'll leave it. Goodbye. Good night. See you later.
Just taxi for George McGee.
I'm off. See you later.
So that was George and I doing what we do every week, which is we sit each other down and talk about Commando.
And talk about Arnie's tight buttocks.
So we wait a long time to do this film. I'm glad we've done this film. What have we got coming up next? Are we allowed to tell people what's coming up next?
Next month, actually,
whenever you're listening to this, George, we were in the past and they're in the future.
We are. It will be Halloween, so we will be doing an American Werewolf in London.
I think you say a rom-com. Yeah. Okay,
so yes, we will be doing for its 40th anniversary, I believe.
There's a tie-in. There's definitely always a tie-in.
Yes, horror comedy. But I just found it more of a horror film growing up.
I was terrified of that film.
Favorite film of the Glendinnings.
Glendinnings terrified us.
Dabbling with horror as we usually do for Halloween. So that is coming up. And we've got some other things in the pipeline between now and the end of the year.
Lots of special things coming your way. So yeah, that's been emotional. I'm glad that we've got Bennett's crazy eyes ticked off the list and that we don't have to go back to that unless it's our own choice. Thank you everybody for all the comments and all the feedbacks and all the suggestions. Many films being added to our revelations lists. People pointing out some films that might have not been in the Glendinning or Feeney or McGee VHS collection, but we will get to them. And just to be known, we're going to always be doing the same Retro Ramble episodes will always be available to you. But all of these extras and specials and revelations that we're talking about doing in the next few months, those will be for our Patreon audience when we've got our asses into gear and got it all sorted out. Anything else we need to bring up, George?
No, just the usual sort of platitudes of thank you for listening. Yeah, if you enjoy this podcast, we are an independent little podcast. We do this out of, our love for these films. So if you enjoy what you hear, please spread the word, whether that's in real life, on social. But yeah,
or to your cat or your goldfish.
But as Charlie and I are quite approachable. So if you do have questions, if you do have film suggestions, please get in touch. There are some weird and wonderful films that we've never heard of. There's some films that we may have just completely forgotten about. So hoping to bring more different content your way via our Patreon. But yes, if you've got any ideas, let us know.
So I've been Charlie McGee.
I've been George McGee.
We've been Commando. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.